Hi all, Ross here, Thomas Classic and Modern. Welcome back to the channel. It's been somewhat of a hiatus from the channel, unfortunately. Mainly, in fact, we've been absolutely flat out busy, not only in work, building engines and building cars and this, that and the other, but we've also been flat out busy in our personal lives as well. I was actually very fortunate and got married back in August, so that was a great day. And then obviously we had our honeymoon in September, and now all of a sudden, believe it or not, we're into October, and it really feels like my feet have not touched the ground for a long time. So I thought I'd do a quick little video today on something that we've just come across, which may be of interest to some of you. On one of our engine builds, we're building one of our OEM Plus units for a customer, which has the AC Dodd RT cam, bored out to 1310, and one of our Keith Calver big valve conversion heads, and also a set of AC Dodd 1.3 rockers. We have come to do our checks now towards the end of the build, and we have found some issues with the rocker geometry. None of those issues are anything at all to do with the parts that are fitted. They are more to do with the inherent wear in the cylinder head, which means that the valve seats in this particular head were already cut quite high up into the chamber. Obviously they've been refurbished again now since, and obviously they've been recut again, which basically alters the point at which the valve is sat in the cylinder head. So what that does, if we show you on the engine, is it alters the angle of the rockers, which causes us, or can cause us, a problem. This is not so much of a problem on this particular build, but you will see now when we have a look at it that it is very, very close to being an issue. So let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so here we have our assembled unit, which is just going through the final checks. You will hopefully be able to pick up in camera. These are our AC Dodd 1.3 offset bushed rockers, and you will hopefully be able to pick up how close the push rod is to the push rod hole there. That in itself is not a major issue as long as it's not galling up, and as you can see, we can still turn the push rod, so there's no major problem there. They do run quite close sometimes. However, you will see that the angle is very exaggerated on both the rocker adjuster and the push rod. So they are much more coming together at this sort of angle rather than being nice and even. What that also means is that the rocker, instead of being sort of nice and level and halfway through, you know, its adjustment, is very, again, exaggerated. And that is all due to the fact that this valve is higher up in the pocket, in the seat. And then obviously where the head's been faced, etc., everything is just a little bit exaggerated from where it should be. So what that does effectively is not only makes all of these things very, very close to each other. You might be able to see in there that the valve is very, very close to the rocker as well. Not actually touching, but very, very close. Not really ideal. So how we sort that is we need to put some spacers underneath the rocker pedestals to bring the pedestal back up, which will then allow us to adjust this arm. If you imagine, that tip will stay in place. We will lift the pedestal and obviously the shaft on its center point, which will mean that this arm will naturally level out, bring all of that push rod assembly back this way. And the other thing that it will critically do is make our lift correct as well. Because at the moment with that rocker sat like that, we are going to be losing lift on these valves, even with the 1.3 rockers. So I will just show you the shims that we need to install. So these are the rocker pedestal shims that we now need to insert. These are supplied by our good friends at Mini Spares. We usually have a selection of these in stock. They're about 1.15 millimeters thick, standard fare. I'm not 100% certain actually whether you can get these in different thicknesses anymore, but generally these are absolutely fine. So these are what we need to install. What I'm going to do before we do that is I'm going to run through how we check for valve lift at the valve, and we will be able to see what effect these shims have on the actual valve lift then as well. So I'll just get our DTI set up and we'll run through what the valve lift is at the moment. We'll install some shims and we'll run through what the valve lift is afterwards, and we can also then see how it straightened things up on the rockers. So let's get into that. Okay, so what we need to do this is I've set the valve clearance on here at standard 13 thou, just so we've got a reference point. This is just a plate that I have made that I use for things like this. You need a DTI magnetic stand. This one is measuring in thou and it's 0 to 1 inch. You need something like that because obviously most cams are going to have sort of 300 thou or more of lift. So you need something really with a decent range on it. So how I like to do this is set up the DTI on the valve with plenty of preload on the DTI itself. And you need to get it positioned just so that the rocker, not so bad with these, but if you're running high lift rockers or the dreaded roller rockers, you've got precious little room here. So you need to set up as close as you can to the edge of the valve without running off, and also making sure that the rocker doesn't interfere or foul the push rod itself. The plunger itself, not the push rod, it's the other end of the rocker. So how I like to do that is something like that. So we have our plunger now pretty much in the center of the valve on the valve line, and it's pretty much as far out towards the edge. On these caps obviously there's a chamfer, you need to avoid that, and that is now magnetically fixed on there. So what we have now is obviously a fair amount of preload on that. We now need to turn the crankshaft and make sure that we're in a dead spot so that that valve is not being touched at all by the rocker. I know it's not because you can feel the clearance in it. But we will just rock that crankshaft back and forth now, make sure there's no movement on this needle. We'll then zero it, and then we will go all the way down as far as we can to show full lift. So turning that engine either way, that DTI is not affected at all by doing that. So what I will now do is I shall zero our DTI, and then we need to rotate it so that this valve now is going down towards full lift. And when you're doing this, you need to now count your rotations. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. So we're coming up. So you can see the point at where that swings. So we have 3. Just come back. Full lift slowly. Oop, missed it. Nice and slow. That is there. So we have, bearing in mind now that this is obviously working in reverse. So we had 3 full rotations, which is 100 thou. And then we have 10, 20, 30, 41. So we have 341 thou of lift at that point. So what we will now do, we will take this off. I'm going to slacken the rocker gear off, take the rockers back off, and I'm going to add 2 of our shims to each pedestal. I believe that's probably what we're going to need, but we'll add 2, torque it all back down, and I'll come back to you when we've done that, and we'll redo that measurement, and we'll have a look at how the rockers and the push rods are sitting. Okay, so there we go. That's our 2 shims under each pedestal. Now, when I took this apart, I didn't slacken this adjuster off, so this adjuster is exactly where it was before. So, just as purposes of demonstration, add in those 2 shims under each of those rocker pedestals, so 2.3 mil of spacers under those rocker pedestals has given us that as a tappet gap. So you can see that was set to 13 thou. It is now a barn door, and that is just by adding the spacers underneath there, the shims underneath the rockers. So you can see how much of a difference that has already made. So what I'll do is I'll quickly reset that tappet now to 13 thou, which is where we were before as a clearance, and we'll see how that lines up. So I've just slackened that off, and I'm not even going to check that for clearance, if I'm honest, but as you can see, I've got all of them in there and more, in all honesty. That's probably more like that stack. So yeah, absolute country mile. It's surprising how much of a difference just those shims make. So we'll reset that now to 13 thou. I will apologise if you can't hear me or you can't understand me. As you can probably tell, I am suffering somewhat. I think I might have a touch of man flu. Oh dear. Okay. Lovely, there we go. So that's 13 thou. So what you will be able to see now from the side is how much more level that rocker arm actually is now across this plane, and how much more less of a exaggerated angle we've got between the 2 there. You will also see that that adjuster now is nice and central between there. So what we'll do now is we'll rig up with our plate, and let's see if that has affected the lift. Okay, so I've just popped our DTI back on there now. Bit of a better shot for you now. You can see how that rocker now has leveled up much more in line with the cylinder head face, and obviously again we've reduced this exaggerated angle we had here with a push rod. Push rod now is well away from the push rod hole in the cylinder head, so that's all spot on. So what we'll do now is we'll come around the front and we'll just see what we've got in terms of lift now. See if that adjustment of the shim has altered the lift at all. So let's see what we got. So we're on 0 there, and we have 1, 2, 3. That's nice and slow. So that is to there. So we now have 3, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 361 thou of lift at exactly the same check-in clearance of 13 thou. So that small bit of effort that we put in to getting those rockers nice and level, getting some clearances at the back of the push rod hole, has also now paid dividends in so much as we've gained What did we say we had? 361. So we've gained 20 thou of lift. Not an inconsiderable amount of lift, in all honesty. Standard camshaft will come in anywhere near sort of 308-ish, something like that. So as you can imagine, the cam as it was, with the rockers set as it was, gave us some advantage over a standard cam. But now we've really optimized what we've got out of that camshaft. So it's another one of those really of, you need to check these things. Don't just bolt parts together. You need to go into these things eyes wide open. Absolutely nothing wrong with any of the parts that have been supplied, machined, or anything like that. This is all about what goes into making these things work fully and correctly. So I'm pretty confident now that we've nailed that potential issue for this build. Hope you find that a little bit informative. It is a little bit techie, so apologies if that's not your bag. But it's, again, another one of those things that crops up from time to time in engine builds. So thanks very much for watching. Apologies once again for my croakiness and my lack of content recently. As I said, we have been busy. We are still horrendously busy, which is absolutely fantastic. Can't thank our customers enough for bringing us so much work. It's great. Hopefully now we'll get on with shooting some more footage for you and get the channel really bubbling along quite nicely. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please give us a like and subscribe. Have a look at some of our previous videos. And as I say all the time, if there's anything you would like to see a video on, please drop us a comment, let us know, and we'll try and sort it out for you. In the meantime, thanks very much for watching. We'll see you soon. Cheers.